Welcome to this edition of the ManagementOS Podcast, brought to you by the team at CEOmastermind.ai. Talking to Mitchell is a real treat. I think you're going to want to sit down for this, look up all the things and the body of work that he's done. He got 65 books to market. We're going to put in the links to pre-sale for his number 66 book. So there will be no shortage of topics. We are not on a mission today to cover his body of work in the next sort of 30 to 45 minutes. But we're going to cover a lot of ground. I think one of the things that he talks about is this word called abundance, and it gets used a lot. And at the end of the day, it's really not hustle, not growth at all costs, performance theater. It's like real abundance. And what does that mean? I think that's what we're going to talk about here. So Mitchell is a global credibility expert. He's published, your company has published over 750 books. Published 65 to market, number 66 coming. You've coached and engaged with 1,000 leaders. Your circle of influence is the who's who, which you've been blessed with and able to help so many people around the world. And I think for you and your work is you don't just talk about this purpose and values. You find ways to operationalize them. You turn the credibility, trust, abundance into really visible, measurable behavior that leaders can execute. So without further ado, welcome to the show, and appreciate you and your time and sharing your a few pearls of wisdom with us today. Thank you.
It is great to be here, and what a wonderful opening. Thank you. I'm honored.
Yeah, no, thank you for sure. And yeah, the honor is mine. I'm just preparing for this was kind of hard because I'm like, oh, what do we talk about? We're going to focus a little bit. The first sort of area we'll dive into is this concept of executive abundance and what does it mean? Because it could mean different things. And so the question is most leaders will hear abundance and they may think it's vague, they may think it's philosophical, they may think it's woo-woo, like it's just, probably like when I say systems and processes, people their brain goes on fire in the wrong direction. And the same thing probably happens with abundance. And so how do you define executive abundance based on your body of work?
So it's bringing abundance. By abundance, I mean a healthy life, healthy attitudes, not necessarily money. Bring abundance to five stakeholder groups, not just one. So I have sat in the board of a public firm in the past, and we had a fiduciary responsibility to make sure the investors are happy. When we went to a board meeting, we focused with a single lens, investors. As a matter of fact, you might even argue that one of the biggest problems with Western societies today is the short-termism that comes about with quarterly financial reports, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what is abundance? Abundance is bringing abundance to five stakeholder groups. And I'll walk you through the five. First
Yeah.
one, and this should be number one, your health and your family. If you don't have that, if your internal operating system is off, it's going to come across everywhere. Now, for the company itself, the second stakeholder group is the employees. Now, we talk about employee satisfaction, employee engagement, but what we're doing is we optimize employee productivity. And just to be clear, with AI and robotics, the most optimal form of employee productivity is no employees at all. But that's another story. So let's focus on
Mm-hmm.
optimizing the
Yeah.
employee experience. Okay, if you take care of the employees, guess what? They're going to take care of the customers. So stakeholder three is the customers. If you take care of the customers, they will take care of the investors. So investors are fourth, not first. And then we do all
Yeah.
that within a community, whether it's physical or virtual. And so it's bringing abundance to all five stakeholder groups. And when the biggest issue with all of the current processes and formulas, and since I'm in the middle of my PhD, the normative focuses out there like
Yeah.
stakeholder capitalism, B Corp, purpose-driven organizations, CEO authenticity. Like the one of the biggest problems is they talk about how all the things should be normative, right? But what they don't do
Yeah.
is give an operating system. that addresses how do you actually do that in times of stress? And stress
Yeah,
is the quarter's right around the corner. We're not making our numbers. What do we do? Or
yeah,
we're about ready to release a product, but it's going to cause, 50% of our customers to really not like us. What do we do? Right. So in those times, if you start focusing on the broader executive abundance lens of five stakeholder groups, it will allow you to
yeah.
make decisions that are different than the decisions that are being made today.
Yeah, I love that you said that we connected. I didn't tell you before we started recording the show, but we sort of connected on that concept. And I love that you went into, the family, employees, client, your five forces, if you will. I'm actually I have a TEDx that I actually got accepted to do. And the title of my talk as of now is Why Profit Fiduciary Responsibility is Killing Families, Lives, and Companies. And it's exactly what you said, right? It's a short-term nature and the belief if we talk about here at Management OS is that you have one life, you should have one playbook, right? And I think to your point, when you're only thinking about one lens, it damages the rest. When I was at Kraft back in the early 2000s, one of my bosses always says, you got to do this in order of the three C's. What are the three C's? In order of priority. What's in it for the consumer, what's in it for the customer, and then what's in it for the company. The moral of the story is that the consumer comes first, if you will, and the company comes last in that regard for a CPG. What they missed is what you talk about sort of oneself, right? Because you're not thinking about your family and health as much. And I agree with you that's, that was from 25 years ago. But the point being is the company should kind of come last because if you do what's right for everyone else, your customers, your employees, yourself, all of that flows back. And I love that you're, really honing in on that because it is, in my opinion, and all the hundreds of business leaders I talk to, it appears it to me it seems to be really missing, and it shouldn't be. And I think we have a chance to, particularly with AI, to shift. Like, why not have a two-day work week? But a 5 day output, and those other 5 days, one day you exercise, one day you volunteer at a hospital or a church, go do stuff with your kids, like go do stuff in nature. Why not? Like, I don't know who invented this 5 day work week in the first place. We all know why. It was an industrial revolution, so on and so forth. But today we have the means to engineer a completely new, different world where I think you can have the abundance that you talk about and promote, right?
That is a phenomenal deployment of executive abundance. It's right at our fingertips. We can do that. And I agree with you. I like that. Thank you. I had not heard that before in that way. Or if I heard it before, it didn't mean the same because I wasn't wearing the same lens. I wasn't wearing the same
Yeah.
hat. And now I hear it and I'm like, yeah, that will work. And so it's sort of this focus on optimizing the employee experience. And by the way, part of that, if you're a credible human, um, to be a employee that's having a good experience, it means that you are of service and you are of service to an audience. And that audience
Yeah.
is a much broader audience. So optimizing employee experience versus optimizing employee productivity. Um, I love that concept. I'll have to think about that. But at the moment,
Yeah.
I think I mentioned in our pre-talk, I am thinking about um, I'm on the cusp of defending my dissertation. That comes first, and the book gets released second.
In the first second, yeah. And you know what I think? I was at a presentation by Dr. Benjamin Hart, and he was talking about his book, The Science of Scaling, and he was had a slide up there what got me thinking, and it was from Elon Musk, where he said most engineers or most businesses or whatever, they're optimizing or over engineering for the wrong thing. And so as I think about this, the transformation that we're in multiple transformations across the world, unlike history before. There's, political change, there's sort of systemic change, there's cultural, but this has always been like this, right? So there's always been change every, 20, 30 years. And I think we have an amazing opportunity to sort of shift it in real powerful direction that can last hundreds of years. I don't think there's a greater transformation that we'll ever go through than what's happening right now. And I think with a positive lens, you can see the good through it, which is great.
Nice. Nice. Thank you.
So when you see, like in your experience, like when yeah, how do you know when a leader is operating from scarcity, even if the business looks successful on paper? Because there's a lot of I'm sure there's a lot of that, right? There's a lot of external, but have you come across the signals or things? What I'm thinking about is the audiences. Sometimes they think they're successful, but they really forget about some of the other parts of their sort of whole life, if you will.
So it's so funny. That's one of the I've got a really nice checklist on the back of my book that covers just that. But I don't want to. I guess I could read from it, but I don't want to do that, right? So the if I'm thinking about the audience you're talking to, if you're listening to me right now and you're thinking, "Huh, do I fall into there?" What if you're operating under scarcity? You're making decisions you regret. You're 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 losing good people not because of money, but because they found a better opportunity that fits their needs better. You're um, losing customers for the same reason that are sticking with you because they found a better product at a better price versus sticking with you because you're doing the right thing and you're covering a number of opportunities for them. I'd say part of this is what's really hard because when you're in a leader, you're number one. You're the world evolves around you. You've got this little planetary system, and I might encourage you to hire a coach to do a 360. It's not it. I wish I could have simple answers to a question like that, but to do a 360 where you can actually get to see
Mm,
who, have a conversation. So basically, it's somebody else independent having a conversation, and one-on-one conversations is so much better than the automated 360s. And talking about, and basically those from different stakeholder groups
yeah,
and getting direct, honest opinions of who you are and how you show up.
yeah,
Because if you're operating under scarcity, the truth is you are a different person in the office than you are at home. You are looked at differently from your teams. The conversations that happen at night in the dinner around the dinner table of all your employees are all negative, and it's your employees complaining about you. Those
yeah.
are a couple classic examples.
I love that you brought up the 360 review and having conversations. I know for myself throughout my career, those have been the most rewarding. I've always say that as leaders, no matter whether you're the leader, your role as a dad, as a brother, or whatever it might be, um, we're inside the jar, right? So we think we're doing okay, or we're thinking we're showing up in the world the way that we need to be. But what we know is from like brain science is when you're under stress or you're fear or you're operating in a non-optimal state, your cognitive abilities to function, you don't outlay the way you probably think you are or want to. And so what I have found in my experience is that 360 degrees is like, huh, I didn't know that I did. For example, I got one feedback where one of my directors said, hey, sometimes because I get excited, I'm Italian. For those of you watching the YouTube, my hands kind of go flying all over the place sometimes. Um, this whole essence, sometimes I get so excited and I just, my old boss at Kraft, he's now the CEO, where's that? I don't know, one of these big companies. He said, you're like an Italian stallion, you got to be controlled, right? And so sometimes that energy comes out and I talk over people and I don't mean to, but I get excited about what they said. And no one said anything to me for a while. And then I found that out. I was like, how it made them feel and all that. I was like, oh man, like my intent was noble and good, but I was not showing up in an outside world that people saw that. And so to your point, the power of having those one-on-one conversations, the 360 reviews helped sort of calibrate me as a leader. Do those tendencies for myself still show up? Absolutely. But now I'm aware of them and I can kind of put stop gaps in them. So like, oh, oh, I'm about to say something. I feel my body leans forward and I was like, no, hang on a second. Mitchell's not done. Don't don't say anything or whatever the situation might be. So um, that's one example for me and how it showed up, and maybe that might be the same for a lot of us leaders,
Oh, I love that. Well, one way to think about um, what is either scarcity or abundance is to think about your legacy. Right. So let me give you a definition of legacy. Legacy is what people say about you when you're not in the room.
Yeah,
Okay. So regarding showing up with abundance or scarcity, the legacy of any leader is felt in the success of their stakeholders. So I want you to think about that.
Hmm.
That's why for the
Hmm.
360, because your legacy today, you as a leader of the organization you run, if you're listening, paying attention, watching this, your legacy is how your stakeholders feel about you and are they successful? Are your employees happy? Is the community happy? Are they receiving
Hmm.
abundance? Is your family getting abundance? Like that's why executive abundance is so important because at the end of the day, it's how you go about making your stakeholders feel that is truly your legacy.
Yeah, something tweaked in my head. Maybe I'm going on a tangent, but this whole essence that if you get that feedback, I think for me, there was a few months ago I heard it. I don't know who said it, but anyways, the concept about leftovers. Like, is everything that's important in your company, get it, or to your life? So if you go back to your, your five stakeholders, you might be really good at one, but everyone else is getting leftovers. Right. So if you're full of abundance and in your zone of genius and doing things you love with, in the area that you think that aligns with your purpose, no one should be getting your leftovers, including yourself, right? Like you should be able to look after yourself and show up. And anyway, my head, when you said the whole family thing, and my head went into that leftover concept because it's like, so now I think about how do I show up so that I'm not showing up as a leftover. You know what I mean? Like I'm showing
Mm.
up in the best way. So how do I show up? So yeah, I'm tired. Well, I'm not tired right now, but let's say I was tired right now, whatever. And I'm like, nope, Mitchell needs me on my A game. I can't, out of respect for you and whoever I'm around, what do I need to do so that I'm not coming across with just leftovers, whether it's my
I
kids,
hear
my
you.
partner,
So I'm going to say what's interesting to me, I'm going to take that concept. So your definition of leftover is simply, hey, you're going to show up with your A game, everything else is your leftover, right? So what I'm going to say is if you can encourage yourself and your employees and your company and others to essentially be executing on their purpose,
Mm,
right? If you wake up and you're doing something you're like, oh my God, this is what I was meant to do. This is what I enjoy doing. This is what I was meant to be. And executing on your purpose doesn't, that can change and will change over time because who you
yeah,
are and those around you are going to change. But if you're executing on your purpose, essentially the joy that comes inside of you is going to allow you to be in your A game versus giving people your leftover.
giving giving you leftovers. Yeah, that's a good articulation. And funny enough, I guess I was saying before this call, most of the time, they like what I do with the people that I do things, and that's
Nice.
pretty good,
Yeah.
right? So,
That's
and
awesome,
sometimes you're
by the way.
tired. It's yeah, and sometimes I'm tired or whatever, and I don't show up 100%. It's impossible to be 100%, 100% of times. That's not real, I don't think. But I think if you can put yourself into that space more often than not, and always just learn little tweaks, a little 1% better today and 1% better next week, you just get to the next level, right? So. Um, Going to shift a little gears. Maybe we'll get back to what trust and all that, what stuff means. I want to talk a little bit about credibility. You're obviously known as the global sort of credibility expert. So how do you define credibility at the executive sort of founder level? You've been in public boardrooms, and how do what's your experience around that?
Well, so now you've hit this is the research that I had done. So I had spent $50,000. I interviewed 500 thought leaders between 2019 2020. Ended up doing a
Yeah.
TEDx, which has a 500,000 views. The TEDx, for those that are interested, is called "We Are Losing Our Humanity," and I'm tired of watching it happen. And out of that research, I ended up adding to the concept of what the word credibility means. Now, the thing that's interesting, you'll even get this in this conversation. When people say words, you have to make sure you understand how they're defining it, which is why I
Sure.
before I made my statement on the word leftover, is I said, hey, you're defining leftover in this way, just so I can then add on top of that. Let me give you the definition, and I'm going to share it on the screen. This
Oh,
is
great.
what I have updated the definition of credibility to be. And that came out of the interviews of the 500 thought leaders. Credibility is the quality in which you're trusted, known, and liked, Remember, if I said your legacy is how it is felt in the success of your stakeholders. Being liked, they don't need to love you, but they need to like and respect you. And how are you liked and respected? You respect others, right? And so there are 10 values associated with credibility. The obvious ones you could see under being trustworthy, it's are you authentic? Are you coachable? When a board gives me a CEO and says, "Hey, Mitchell, can you coach this person?" I need to have a conversation up front to see if they're coachable. That's the primary
Yeah.
thing there are two things, two things I care about. Um, One, they need to have love versus hate in their heart. Two, they need to be coachable. Those are two non-starters for me, right? But if you take a look at a lot of times when I'm talking with somebody, particularly when I focus on my podcast, I want to make sure they're vulnerable, right? We all make mistakes. So what happens if you
Yep.
make a mistake? Okay, good. I admit it. I made a mistake, right? So what's interesting when you look through all these, being liked, I actually was able to define if you're a leader and you want to be liked, there are two things you have to do. Kind of simple. One, show respect. Typically, what I found that means coming early, coming prepared, coming with your heart,
Mm.
right? So even when you're the leader, if someone on your team sent you a report and you were supposed to read it, make sure you read it before you get there. Make sure you get there at least a minute or two early to the meeting, not late. If you're doing a podcast, you'll notice on Zoom, I was here 9 minutes before. I thought I was late because I wasn't 10 minutes before. I was here 9 minutes before the start time, right? So to me, that
Hmm.
is what I consider showing respect. The other thing that's important is sharing your stage. If you are the leader of the company, the best thing you could do is empower your employees. And the best way you can do that is give them credit for who they are and what they've done and their expertise. I call it spreading cred dust. It's sharing the ideas, thoughts, and actions of others. So hey, you're a leader, you want to be liked, you want to actually do a great job of allowing your legacy to be felt stronger, focus on this likable piece of it. I do want to mention one other thing. If for those who have looked, if I'm looking at the top, authenticity, servant leadership, showing respect are all very important under the three pillars. What I will mention is there's one value that's listed twice, and that value is integrity. And
Mm.
it's so funny when I did the research, I knew integrity needed to be twice. It took me a year before I figured out what it really meant. So
Mm.
let me share with you what it really means, right? So under being trustworthy, the external integrity is who you say you are. Now, as you get to know somebody or get to know a company, the integrity, the internal integrity there is who they actually are.
Mm.
So imagine, whenever you've talked to somebody or you're in a situation and the hair in the back of your neck sticks up, if you're outside in a bad street, it's because you feel integrous with your health, your safety. But if you're talking to somebody and who they really are is different than who they say they are, you feel the need to run that incongruity is a problem. So it's interesting that you not only need to say the right stuff, you need to be and do the right stuff. That's the definition of
Yeah.
credibility, the quality which you're trusted, known, and liked.
I love this. I remember when we first met, you shared this with me. If you're listening to this podcast, go look this up on our YouTube channel. What we're looking at and what Mitchell's referring to is obviously being trustworthy. So think about three circles. There's being trustworthy, circle known, and then another circle called likable. And then there's words around. So the four words around trustworthy is what he mentioned: authenticity, integrity, vulnerability, and coachability. The next sort of circle is, the center being known. Around that is servant leadership, intent, commitment, and integrity. And third, but not least, is in the center is being likable. And then here we have two words to the left, what you talked about earlier, sharing the stage. And then on to the right of it is showing respect. I love this visual because it's your credibility framework. And it's something that people can think about and model as they're going about their daily lives and their meetings and personal professional development. I love this framework a lot.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm like a big guy. I love models and frameworks. I always find like mind maps and those sorts of things help me at least help me retain things, right? So that, and I think for the audience, think about those three things, and then you just think about credibility, three things. What are the three things and the words that float? Save the video on YouTube or come back to this and sort of use that as your inspiration for, how you might deploy it. So, do you think that credibility can be rebuilt once it's damaged, or is it mostly preventative?
Uh, so both.
Oh, yeah.
But to answer your direct question, can it be rebuilt? Yeah. We all make mistakes, right? So depending on the mistake, there's some things you can't come back from, right? But we'll ignore
Hmm.
those. Let's talk about the a company made a mistake on a product release, right? A good example. You just put stuff out there. It was before its time. Preventative would it be, hey, listen, we said we're going to deliver in this date, but we can't. We can't because we expect that X% of our customers will find fault and that'll be a problem. So we're going to hold off for a month or hold off for a quarter, right?
Yeah.
And that would be preventative. That said, let's say they went ahead with the release because they wanted the numbers to come in, and they had that problem. And subsequently, you get all these companies that do these recalls, right? So if you're doing
Yeah.
a recall, how can you do it in such a way where you're demonstrating that you really cared? Right. Listen, we in our operations, these things happened. We had a problem. We have found the problem. We have put in policies, procedures so that it won't happen again. And we'll stay on top of this going forward. Right. And so now the thing is, you got to stay on top of it
Yeah.
because you get using the monopoly terms, one get out of jail free card in many cases. And
Hmm.
so if you actually can truly own it. So you authentically are coming up and saying what you've done. You're showing the fact that you have the vulnerability to admit that you had mistakes. You demonstrate the intent and commitment to do the right thing, and you continually report on it in such a way where you're showing respect to your audience that they are actually seeing, understanding, feeling. Like you can't say something's one way when it's something else.
Yeah.
Yes, so you could rebuild credibility by addressing it head on and owning the mistake and owning the fix.
Well, yes, and I asked that question because when I read the book Winning from Jack Welch, there's a whole section on PR, and some people say, "Oh, I don't think it's just never let a good crisis go to waste." That's the wrong mindset. The mindset is the truth always comes out, and sometimes we do make mistakes. And so, and a good example of what you mentioned, there's a company called Maple Leaf Foods. In the mid 2000s, they had a listeria outbreak. About, I don't know, 5, 10, 15, 20 people died from it, and they dealt with it head on. And it's a great example of, you have great credibility, something damaged it, but the approach by which you go through it, which you just talked about, is the right way to do it, and you can rebuild it, which is, and it should be protected, right? So like you said, you got to stay on top of it. And I think that's, I always say the most important thing we have is our name, right? So what, like the integrity, like what do we people say when you're not there? And then when you're gone, do they want to talk to you again? And I learned that from the book, The Magic of Thinking Big. Remember they said is always, or that, no, that was the other one, a Dale Carnegie book. It was the Dale Carnegie book.
Ah,
You want to leave people in the way that they want to talk to you again. Unless you don't want to talk to them again,
which by the way
you
is
might
another
damage
way.
it.
It's another
Yeah.
way of saying that's your legacy,
That's your
right?
legacy.
Your
Yeah.
legacy is felt in your stakeholder success.
Yeah, it's critical. I'm going to pop in for the last bunch of minutes here. I'm going to go into sort of this one by one relationship sort of beat scale first type thinking, if you will. So you say one by one relationship building is the core of modern selling. I think I know what you might say, but why does this matter now more than ever?
You know,
Hmm.
it with AI, deep fakes, um, what we care about is is actually understanding the person we're talking to is really them, right? I
Yeah.
get, oh my God, every day I'm getting 3 to 5 incredibly well-written emails that are trying to sell me something, and they know more about me than I would have expected them to know, but it's because their AI read about me and
Hmm.
crafted an amazing response. But then they they're not quite there yet because they're going for the sale at the end where it's not quite right, right? You can't, you know, as a executive coach, I'm not going to go and look at somebody and say, "Oh, by the way, I can coach you. You should buy my stuff," right? I'm going to
Hmm.
build a relationship over time. Even when I'm uh, given a client and we had that first call, my assumption is simply that I can't, as a coach, I can't change anybody. I'm not that prescriptive guy that says do A, B, and C. What I can do is give somebody a framework. And I give them a
Hmm.
framework, they could see the world in a different way. Now, the thing is, can AI give the same framework? They can. It doesn't quite feel the same. So
Yeah.
what ultimately happens, we've been taught to build our business at scale. We've been taught that enough is never enough. And what is
Yeah.
abundance? Abundance is as you said this right before in the green room, I said, "How you doing?" And you go, "I'm really happy. I get to work on the stuff that I want to work on right now with the people I want to work with." That's abundance,
Hmm.
right? Abundance is not taking your bank account that may already be huge and making it bigger. That's not abundance. That's just money. That doesn't make you happy. On your deathbed, incremental money is not going to make you happy, right? And
Yeah.
so what you want to focus on is you want to focus on the relationships that bring you joy. You want to focus on more one-on-one relationships because that's really how you're going to drive success in sales is people actually see you, they feel you, they trust you, they know you, they
Hmm.
like you, they buy from you.
Yeah, I think, yeah, you're exactly right. You see these sort of things like that, we talked about the difference between the slimy selling and sort of authentic relationship selling, right? So like especially on LinkedIn, it's crazy. Um, People are allowed. I think this is where we're in that. In there's four stages of a team. There's forming, storming, norming, and then performing. To me, it feels like we're still in the storming phase of the tech, where I sometimes see it where, well, just AI and let just AI do it. Well, it doesn't. To your point, it doesn't quite work like that. Like it's not this magical thing. And so I think it's a tool that can help you be more authentic if you take that lens rather than being inauthentic. I always say, tools and these sorts of things like AI, just say it's a tool. I liken it to like a $10,000, let's say titanium hammer, slight and strong. You give it to me, I can afford a $10,000 hammer. Let's say I could. I'm gonna have a little fun around the house. It'll be a little more fun and interesting hanging up pictures, fixing the nails on the deck, whatnot. Give it to my cousin who's a carpenter. Now all of a sudden, he can now build twice as fast, less injury, better accuracy, so on and so forth. So it's the tool in the right hand with the right skill because you always need that experience. And I think some of the challenge that I see out there is that a lot of folks just use it for this catch-all, and it feels slimy as you've talked about in the past, right? And it's just sort of slimy selling, and you're not actually building a relationship or transferring energy with folks, right? And I still think we're still humans. Our genetics, our body has not evolved in 50,000 years, but our entire environment has completely changed in the last, since the 70s, 140 some odd thousand new compounds have been produced and put into our environment. That's how different it is. And yet, but we're still the same. We're still, you can't beat a chat over a Zoom in person over a cup of coffee. One of these days, I'm going to come see you in Cupertino and,
Dude, I would
just enjoy
love
it.
that. I would love that. By the way, the reason I mentioned it, in order for me to test drive some of my concepts of executive abundance, I ended up buying a LinkedIn agency. And I don't know if I ever told you this. I was in a room with two of the five founders before LinkedIn was making money. And they actually commissioned me to make sure we wrote and published the first book on LinkedIn. So
Oh,
happy
wow.
about LinkedIn for recruiting, the first book. Now, what was interesting, if you look at the price point, I'm showing the back of the book, it's
Yeah.
$69.95 for a very, very thin book. And what happened is when I was talking to her, I'm like, listen, you guys, you got a ton of functionality. Where do you think you're going to make money? And they go, this job search recruiting thing, we think we're going to make money there. So I go, huh, do you think your engineers could give me a link that if it's a new user to your system, you could give them a free LinkedIn job posting? They go, yep. I go, great. What are you going to charge for it? They go, $70. I go, do you mind if I create the book? It's called Happy About LinkedIn for Recruiting. We charge $70 for it, 69.95, they get a free LinkedIn job posting. Oh man, that's a great idea. Um, Now what happened is when they actually released the job posting, it was so successful, they immediately increased the price to $180. You could still buy the book for 70 and get a free LinkedIn job posting. So we had a nice run for a little bit of time. Um,
Interesting.
the the point is I've been on LinkedIn for quite a while. And what I will tell you, and I'll give you the hint, there's 5% of LinkedIn functionality that brings 80% of value. I'm happy to give that away. Now, this is what I do in the LinkedIn agency is I help people have more conversations. Well, how do you get those conversations? Well, you get those conversations in LinkedIn Messenger. And so my favorite part of LinkedIn Messenger is celebrating life events. Happy birthday, happy
Mm,
anniversary, a new job. And
yeah.
I would say 70% of our meetings come from I'll send out a nice happy birthday message. And I wrote that in my tone. That stuff, we send out, but where I get the meetings is every time somebody responds, and just yesterday, by the way, crazy, 25 people responded to a happy birthday message yesterday. 25 people. So that means I look at everyone's profile and I go, oh my good, this person's doing something different than they did before. And I then start a ongoing relationship. So a conversation. And if it's somebody who I absolutely want to talk to, like if it's somebody I know, I'm like, oh man, it's been too long. Let's talk. Here's my link. But if it's somebody I don't
Yeah.
do well, I'll start the conversation to the point where it just makes sense to say, hey, let's get on a Zoom call together. Right? That's
Mhm.
what I mean by the one-to-one relationships. Imagine if you had an employee base of 10 or 100 or 1,000 or 100,000 and they all acted that way. Imagine the power you would bring to the community that you serve.
The throughput would be incredible, no question, and effective. I think that's the biggest piece is that authenticity piece that you talk about, right? Because you kind of really get to that one-on-one. At the end of the day, you can't talk to unless you're a speaker and you're not building a relationship. But the only way you can go from one to many is one way. It's very rare it can go the other way, right? You can't really get
Right.
into anything. So, okay, last question. For the CEOs and founders listening to the show today, if they wanted to take one step toward this executive abundance this week, what recommendation, what tip would you leave us with?
You know, the focus is clarity. Um, the executive abundance has an executive abundance energy and I'm sorry, a executive abundance engine. The wrong E
Mhm.
word came out. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
And in that engine, clarity is number one. And when I did the credibility interviews, 98% of all business professionals I spoke to, 98% do not have clarity. So what I want to encourage you to think about,
Mm.
clarity is not, it's going to take you a couple sentences or a paragraph or a page to say who you are. In 3 to 9 words, who is it that you serve? Who is the audience and what is their pain point or pleasure point to really articulate with clarity that. Now, part of what's going to come out with my dissertation is I will create a clarity architect chatbot. Actually, it's already done. That will be something that people could use to help them articulate that. But to truly, if you asked everyone on your management team, or had the person asked everyone that managing me, hey, in 3 to 9 words, who are you? What do you do? You'll get as many different answers as there are people on your management team. If you can get one answer, by the way, I call this a CPOP, your customer point of possibilities. If you can actually have a CPOP and the entire team understands what it is, It not only acts as a compass for decisions you make, you then share it asynchronously, you share it synchronously. It also acts as a magnet to pull people into you. And so that would be one thing to do to really focus on the CPOP, to focus on the clarity in 3 to 9 words. Where are you executing on your purpose today? That be that one thing.
I don't even have anything to say. That kind of gave me goosebumps as you were explaining it, because I don't know,
Thank
I
you.
don't, I don't know that I could, uh, as quickly as maybe I could or should rather write that down. Like I would, my brain goes, my brain is like working. It's like, okay, well, what would the right word be? Um, so
Well,
thank you
if you
for
want,
that.
we can craft that afterwards, or next time we have a call together. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. That'd be great. Now, what an incredible conversation. Thank you for your expertise and wisdom and sharing it with us today. I'll put everything in the show notes. And for those of you, don't forget to look at the YouTube channel. That clarity, the framework was beautiful. And so thank you for your time and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And for everyone else, hey, may you have a great ability to create and leave your legacy.